Star Trek 57, M23, take 2.
It's got Star Trek, Episode 12. Absolute Candor, or Don't Be a Menace to South Vashti while drinking your juice with the Qowat Milat.
You haven't stopped talking about Admiral Picard since he left. Can't you find something to say to him?
What did you bring me?
What did I bring you? Well, now let me see. The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas. Enjoy.
You're making the Admiral uncomfortable, Elnor. He dislikes displays of emotion. He's not overly fond of children.
Not at all. Someday, I may get used to the way of absolute candor.
Why don't you like children?
Because they're demanding, distracting, and interfere with duty and pleasure alike.
My feelings are hurt. I actually did think you were fond of me.
Correct. I like you very much.
I'm gonna start recording now.
I did.
I did start the recording.
All right, Jimmy Stewart.
On this episode of Panama Picard.
You like his hat?
Yeah, that was a crazy hat.
Yeah. That was like, he was being all weird and jovial. That like when he was down there,
right.
It almost seemed like he
Yeah.
was pandering or something. I don't know.
Well, obviously, I don't think he was. He wasn't trying to
Right.
pander, but yeah, it was a jovial Picard. He seemed to be having a good time wearing his hat.
Yeah, maybe it was his hat. Was he trying to like do the thing where what were those people called the Qowat Lops or the Bimbam
Qowat Milat.
Qowat Milat.
Yeah, which sounds like it's a really delicious
Qowat Milat.
treat of some sort.
Well, they were making some really delicious bread.
Yeah, the bread looked really
It
good.
did. So you think he was just trying to
yeah.
be in the spirit of their honesty because they're
Well, one thing I was thinking, he wasn't wearing a Starfleet uniform, so I think people have been commenting on that, and I figure
He had like a different stance because he wasn't wearing it.
So he gets to be honest with his emotions, and he doesn't have to like be a stuffy captain or whatever.
Yeah,
Even
and
though he's not
also
stuffy,
I was thinking, what's the strategic reason? Well, he's still at this stage. He's still in Starfleet. Obviously, this is before all his resignation and all that. But he's working with Romulans. They're not just because they're being helped out by Starfleet doesn't mean they want it shoved in their face. So it makes sense for him to just sort of have on some civilian clothing. Pretty sharp civilian clothing too. Some would argue an upgrade from his normal TNG era civilian clothing.
Yeah,
like
right.
Ryza. Now, granted, I always kind of liked those outfits. I thought they were like cool future wispy shirts and things.
Yeah.
Funny shorts.
Oh yeah, he had those funny shorts in that one episode. So the opening scene, Picard shows up. Everything's hunky dory. The Romulans are very happy to see him, etc.
They're playing some funny kind of. It's like some kind of funny, like raggly taggly gypsy kind of music or something like.
Yeah, the music in this
Sounds
episode is
like Rusted
The music is
Root or
really
something.
good.
is really good in
There's
this
some interesting.
episode.
There's like some part where they're playing some kind of like fairy RPG party at the inn, guitar plucking. When Narek and Soji are together later on.
Oh, that part, yeah, that part.
It's like some fantasy like style music.
The-
It's made me feel really happy
when they're doing,
even though it was like serious shit.
Yeah, we're gonna skip around like crazy here. I think is my guess. The part where Soji and Narek are doing the quote unquote ancient Borg ritual.
Oh yeah,
which was kind of cute. That music basically sounded like the music from Amelie. I mean, like from the movie Amelie, there's this sort of whimsical, fun, romantic aspect to it, which was kind of cool, but unusual. I mean, an unusual breadth of characteristics of music, types of music in this episode.
I kept thinking like role playing game music, like when you're, when there's something,
Yeah.
some fairies dancing around or something like that.
That whole like sort of town square situation there was like a role playing game kind of.
Oh wait, did you just jump back to the opening?
Jumping back.
Yeah, man.
Gonna go back in time.
We kind of jump forward.
I'm jumping all around now.
You jump back. No, that's good. We need to bring it home back at the ranch because we should get back to. So yeah, that whole time they were playing some kind of mahjong or dominoes.
They had those
or
funny
something.
domino cards again.
Those Romulan cards.
Yeah,
that Ramda was playing.
Like that you keep seeing those.
Yeah, so I bet
Ramda was. It looked like
Ramda
you couldn't
was
tell if
working
was she divining something in
Yeah,
the
it looked
last
like- that's what it
episode,
looked
or was she
like, yeah.
playing? In this episode, clearly it looked more like they were just playing.
But it looked like she was doing some tarot card action, unless she was just passing the time
Right.
with some kind of Romulan solitaire. or
It's
something.
like Yeah, like back in the day, you used tarot cards to play cards, or you also could use them for
You get all sorts of
fortune
wacky
telling.
cards.
So did they ever make rules to that 3D chess game they would play? I'm sure they did, right?
I think so.
I think there's rules to that.
You can buy those. You can buy those sets.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's just chess, but different.
I think
but-
that's pretty early on in like some kind of
But-
Star Trek technical manual or something.
Okay, so so things like that always make it into some sort of real life
Yeah.
situation. So you'd think that this card game at this point, it's been in 2 episodes. There's got to be.
We might be seeing that soon
We might be seeing that.
in the marketplace.
Maybe.
Merry Christmas.
And they called Elnor. So the Romulan dudes are calling him Sister Boy.
Yeah,
Right.
they were making fun of him because
Right.
he was housed by these. It's supposed to be a women's only
Yeah, but
commune.
that's really immature. I mean, they're
Yeah,
it's
no-
immature. It's immature.
I don't think anybody ever accused
Romulans of dick.
Romulans of being particularly
emotionally mature.
Well, so I
So shouldn't they be happy though? Shouldn't they like those people because they helped save their ass? You know.
yeah, but I think you can look throughout history and find a lot of complicated relationships between people being. You could think of it as a microcosm of Starfleet saving the Romulans in a sense. Just because somebody helps you out doesn't mean that you're going to suddenly like them and want to be like them or whatever. Especially if they're considered weird. So you might generally be. If you're a Romulan refugee, you might have a general vibe of like, these are cool. I'm glad these people helped out. But especially early on, right before later on, we hear 14 years later things have kind of gone to shit. So those sisters are helping out a little bit more, but obviously they're still being mean to Elnor. But just because they've helped doesn't mean that you're going to be like, oh yeah, these people are great.
Yeah, and they're in. I guess there's the reason to become even resentful of those kinds of people.
That's a good point
Be
as
like,
well.
I can do my own thing. So I wonder when that Romulans only sign came up. That was probably 14 years later. Or whatever.
Yeah, or more recently.
Yeah. So.
But I thought the introduction of the idea. I mean, first we should say that in just a few episodes of Picard, we've learned more sort of Romulan lore and culture than over eons of previous Trek. So it's great that they're using this as an opportunity to do that. And I think that the introduction of this sect of nuns whose philosophy is, that you get the name of the episode from, absolute candor, the philosophy of being totally honest about everything through the emotion. It's really parallel to the Vulcan sort of logic honesty kind of thing. It comes from a totally different angle though. So it's kind of neat to see that being the Romulan version of a similar concept.
I was actually thinking about Vulcans in this respect because they were talking about how what were they called again? The Qowat.
The Zatvash?
Qowat
No,
Milat.
the Qowat what?
Qowat Milat.
Qowat Milat.
Qowat Milat.
Something like that.
Yeah, so I was thinking about so they were saying Picard was describing them as their whole thing is totally no filter, basically. Whatever emotion appears in their head, they speak it. Which and he said was the opposite of how the Romulans handle thing, which is basically like constant deception.
Even if you're friends with somebody, you're telling lies to them.
Yeah,
for fun,
just to
like
practice
as a gag,
as a neat trick, as a neat gag.
This is what we do.
So Romulans, I guess the implication is that they are inherently very emotional. Of course, Vulcans are inherently emotional too, but through like thousands of years of suppression.
Yeah, and I guess
so I was thinking about how that compares to Vulcans actually, and like that you were saying, there's
as a way
to
to manage it, because depending on which thing you're looking at, the basic idea is that Vulcans and Romulans split because they were a highly emotional group of people collectively, and then Surak came around and said people should be logical, and the Romulans, I don't know the exact timing, but somewhere along in that process, the Romulans were like, no, we're going to keep doing this thing our way, and the Vulcans decided to go in this logic direction. So to have the Romulans, it's been demonstrated now the Romulans are not nearly as monolithic as they may have appeared in the past, when you're only primarily dealing with just government figures and military figures, and they all have sort of similar philosophies. Not totally monolithic, obviously. There's the episode The Defector and things like that in TNG, but basically we see one vibe of Romulan, and then now we're seeing that actually they kind of kept it on the down low, but there are people who have like these different groups with these different ideas of how things should be.
Well, and speaking of parallels, I guess you could, in Discovery also, when was that introduced in Enterprise? The Vulcan terrorists who were basically
the logic extremists.
Extremists.
Right, yeah. I think that was, I'm trying to remember, fairly early on.
I guess that's a little different because the logic extremists took an idea, a Vulcan idea, and went with it. But this kind of took a Romulan idea and sort of twisted it. But for the parallel you were drawing with Vulcans, you basically saying like they were honest with their emotions, just like almost speak their emotions as if it was logic.
Vulcan solution.
They speak their emotions as if they weren't emotions or something.
Well, okay, I think there's two perspectives to look on it, because there's what the Vulcan ideal, what the Vulcan sort of idealistic philosophy is, and then there's the reality of it. Because I think, let's put aside the fact, first of all, the reality is that, as we know, Vulcans are always way more emotional than they think they are, and they are way more susceptible to petty nonsense using logic as a mask. That's the reality.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
their philosophical ideal, basically, as I interpret it, is that they're capable of such violent emotion that only by giving in wholly to the concept of logic can they control that. That's their philosophy. Some people take that for granted as being true. Romulans and others would argue that's not actually true. That's just something that some people said, and it's kind of an extreme thing. And actually, you can do different things. And early on in Enterprise, they do have those Vulcans that are starting to play around with mind melds and other things, where they're saying they're still into logic. They just think you got to like spread your wings a little bit more. So on Enterprise, we learned that the Vulcans were not as monolithic as we may have perceived earlier.
They were fucked up about the mind melds and shit in the Enterprise.
Yeah.
Basically victim shaming with that episode with T'Pol, where T'Pol got mind meld. She basically got mind
meld raped. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they were like, and she lost privileges rather.
Yeah. It's a very, very good, compelling episode, actually, that whole thing, because they make it, it's a difficult episode because of and they do a few things here in Picard here where there's not necessarily a clear villain, right? It's not the antagonist is not necessarily, you can see from their perspective, at least to some degree, which, and I'm kind of curious actually about if there might be going in that direction with Picard. I mean, probably not, but the direction of trying to see different sides of the coin and not definitely that. So I'm suspicious of, like Narissa, right? Narek's sister, Narissa Rizzo, right? She comes off as real evil, evil, blah, blah, blah. I'm a little suspicious of that because it doesn't seem to fit in with most of the other characterizations they have that are somewhat more subtle. And the thing is I know that, certain aspects of TOS, early TNG for sure. Roddenberry was really into what Miyazaki, the Japanese filmmaker, is really into as well, which is to undermine the concept of like pure antagonist and have it be more about like miscommunication or just like a slight misalignment of goals creating friction, where he'll even present somebody, Miyazaki, who you'll think is evil at first, but then as the film goes along, you start to understand that like we're just missing information that they have. And I'm kind of interested to see how far in that direction they go here, because it would be a very Star Trek idea to be like, you have set up all these conflicts with the synths and the Borg and the Romulans and the Romulan refugees, the human Starfleet, etc. And they're all acting at cross purposes, and there's this hidden agenda and all this stuff. If it turns out, what if it turns out the Zhat Vash, which are clearly being sort of set up as an antagonist, what if it turns out that they're 100% correct in whatever their deal is? Or what if they're not correct, but they're not correct for an innocent reason? Like they've just misinterpreted something or not taken account of something. And then so they have to have their mind changed about this whole synths being evil thing.
Well, Narek, he came off sort of... From the start, it's kind of hard to tell what's up with this guy. It's not very obvious.
Yeah.
Now, some characters, like you were saying, like his sister, quote unquote, because it's getting pretty ridiculous with those two. But see, we got to find out at some point that they're not fucking real siblings. That it's all an act, or not. I don't know.
Or that being maybe incest in Romulan culture is not as taboo.
It's totally rad. I don't know.
It may be, in fact, totally rad.
Yeah.
Seems like
the Rad Vash.
It might be rad Vash.
The Rad Vag.
Rad vag.
That's
rad
a classic
vag.
Romulan tale.
Rad
You know, it's an
vag.
old folk tale of the rad vag, where you have sex with your sister and everything's just fine.
It's rad.
So, I mean, so it seems, but he seems like the seemingly most conflicted of the quote unquote bad guys or whatever, because, and it's starting to come out more that he might be doing this because, I mean, they're all talking about her being Soji being the Seb Chaleb or whatever. Is that the deal?
Seb Sheneb, I think.
Seb Cheneb, the destroyer,
Destroyer.
who's basically, you know, a demon of the rapture or whatever, you know, like a rapture demon. And so it seems maybe he's simply just being like, I have to do this for the good of, you know, of human Romulanity. Romulanity. Do this for Romulus. So I mean, yeah, so he could be really conflicted by this whole thing, you know. I mean, he does seem like a creepy dude, so he probably, you know, from the start, he seemed a little creepy. So I think that's just, his mystery is just maybe being, you know, a little bit conflicted.
I mentioned it last week, but I think this is giving really good sort of DS9 style vibes in the sense that you have this mythological representation of, you know, as you said, the demon of the apocalypse, the Zeb Sheneb or whatever, and then you have the reality of the person who is being claimed to be this or a part of this, and I really like that idea of playing with mythological things being sort of a misinterpretation of a real thing, and how the classic criticism of mythology and sort of spiritual religious stricture can be like, are you sure you're interpreting it correctly, you know? And it's like, the 3 dogs will fly at midnight. Well, is that good? Is that bad? What does that mean? I mean, that's up to the human to make the interpretation, even if it is handed up on high and passed through time, etc. So I mean, that could be the core of this. It could be the destroyer. Maybe that's a misinterpretation, and actually it means the rebirther or something, you know?
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, some sort of change, you know. The destruction can be, you know, a transformation.
Like the Genesis device in Star Trek
Right.
2, it does destroy everything, but it also leads to a rebirth of a whole new thing.
Right.
And Into Darkness at the beginning, that was a weird preview, the way they handled those previews. You remember, was it Into Darkness? The previews for that was just like the opening scene, basically. It was like a 15-minute preview.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, so what was the deal? They came down and did some crazy shit, and then the people there who were, I guess, many years behind us Federation people, they all thought it was a god and that whole thing, and then, like, you know, the Enterprise becomes... And wait, that happened to, which was it where somewhat fuck, man? You know, they came back and it was like... Or was that the Orville? I don't remember. I can't remember. There was an episode where one of those dudes had to come back and live with the people for a while because they...
You're thinking of both. That happened, I think it was on Voyager and on the Orville, where the time went fast on the planet.
Yeah, there was that, right? Yeah. I was thinking, and in the Orville one, it was what's her name? The number 1 in Orville. Anyway,
Kelly.
Yes, Kelly. That's right. Kelly.
Yeah, they started
Come
the religion
on,
after
Kelly.
her.
Come
Yeah.
on, Kelly.
Which is a great episode, by the way.
Kelly. Yeah, that's a good episode. Anyway, you know this when they were calling him Sister Boy? No, that
We were talking about Elnor, the sister boy.
Elnor. Oh, that's what it was. Is when speaking of the absolute candor, he was talking about like how he didn't like. Well, so she was talking about telling Elnor Picard doesn't like kids or whatever.
Yeah.
Because of this, that, and that. He's like, no, I love kids. Oh, I love this absolute candor. And I thought, at first time I watched the episode, I thought he was talking about the kid. He like loves the candor of children.
Right.
And it wasn't until a full watch, I was
Yeah.
like, wait, no, he's talking about their whole deal. I just
Yeah.
thought it was like, either another instance of me being slow, or I thought it was kind of an awkward way to introduce it, because it was right after him talking about children, but he was changing references from kids to the...
It's on the one hand is what they've been doing. We've seen this in every episode so far, where the way they introduce things is some of them have to be unfolded, right? Like a flower, or like one of those cootie catchers that you make as a child,
catchers.
right? You have to unfold it. And so you see the thing
make those
early,
now.
but you don't fully understand the thing until later when it's unfolded, and then now you have all the clues. So what the writing has been great in this compared to some issues on Discovery, and frankly on a lot of previous Star Trek episodes series, where they they're just a little bit too much hitting it on the head, you know, like, well, this is the tractor beam boobity bop, and
Too
this is
much
what's going to
on the
happen.
nose.
Whereas this one's letting you discover it, but it does result in some awkwardness because I had the exact same thing. I thought like this absolute candor is sort of an odd phrase, and then you find out later, oh, it's a specific thing. It's a key tenet of a particular philosophy.
Books. They're really into books down there.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
They like paper books. In fact, that whole their whole
He was reading like Three Musketeers to the kid.
Yeah.
he
And then
brought
they
the
were,
he
then they
brought
were
it.
fencing.
I wonder what they ate. Oh, they made bread. That's
They made
right.
that awesome looking bread.
They made that awesome bread. And that greeting they gave, that was like an open book greeting.
Yeah, and that's something that goes back to TNG. I mean, I forget exactly about the details of the greeting, but you know, the
Think about
Jolan
that.
is something that I think we first heard on TNG as a Romulan greeting when
So-
Data and Picard went to Romulus.
Oh, okay.
So I guess I guess the analogy then is that we're like an open book, you know, because we speak our emotions. There's nothing to
Right,
hide,
yeah.
and then we like books at the same time. Just so happens that it fits in with the metaphor that they like books, you know, or maybe not that they love books. Who doesn't like books? I'm saying, but that's funny that in the future he's giving a kid a book, and I think that's interesting. I don't think that's a bad thing. I just think it's a notable
I
thing.
bet that kid reads some Lord of the Rings because he's looking all elfy.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he was. He was looking pretty slick. I thought.
I wanted to comment that what has been interesting on the show thus far has been how cleverly misleading I think the previews have been. Both the previews
right.
leading up to the whole program, to the premiere, and the post show previews. Because I know you don't watch them, Dan, but I usually watch them just to see what's up, and they make you think it's going to go in one direction. And the whole show has been pretty good at this. Because
You thought it was going to be on Free Cloud.
yeah, exactly. You think you're going one way, and then it kind of goes this other direction. And it's not that it's wholly unpredictable. It is in some senses following the sort of standard hero's journey, and all that. But you still, this whole episode, I envisioned in a different way, not a negative way, not a positive way. I wasn't sure, but you saw images of Picard fencing and walking around in some Indiana Jones, like, Cuban, whatever,
Right.
no, Mr. Bond kind of strange outfit. And you're like, what is going on? Like, what exactly is happening? And you didn't factor in the flashbacks and the present day and the refugee settlement site.
Because the
and all
one
this.
for next week just looks completely crazy.
Yeah, that looks
I don't even know
batshit.
what to make of that one.
That looks batshit.
I mean, having not seen it, I mean, I don't care. You can talk about it. I'm just saying, having not seen it, I'm
Looks like
guessing.
they're taking acid or something.
Oh, right. So Free Cloud is like, law of the sea, gambling,
Yeah.
like fucking do whatever the fuck you want kind of planet.
From the preview, it looks like the place to go.
Yeah. So I'm talking about Free Cloud, baby. It's all about Free Cloud.
I mean, I agree with you, Dan, that the Picard was being peculiarly effusive.
Yeah.
On the other hand, he's older. This is after all the events of All Good Things, where he decided he needed to be better friends with people.
He thought he was going to have a fun, happy, like satisfying retirement.
and well, he at this in the 14-year-old years ago flashback when he's got this young boy who looks up to him. He's trying to help out these people. I think that is probably in a lot of ways the epitome, or like the apogee or peak, whatever, the peak of his career, right? In the sense that at that point he's still in Starfleet, but he's got a mission that is specific and in his mind doable but difficult, and he's helping a people that he's wanted to help for a long time. It could bring peace with one of the greatest antagonists.
The most controversial thing about it is they're Romulans, and that's good to him because it means he gets to bring some people together.
Yeah, and I don't think it's even. I think ego plays into it to an extent, but I don't really think it's a pure. It's not a. It's Picard. It's not a pure ego thing. He is sincerely satisfied at being able to really help these people, and that's his mission, and that's his one job now, is not carousing around the galaxy just sort of bumping into spatial anomalies and shit. He has it's a very discreet and specific but challenging thing where every action he takes is going to help people. And this is quite literally, it would seem, days before that's all pulled away from him.
Yeah.
So I think,
Just trying
again,
to make that point, I guess.
one of the criticisms or one of the comments people have made starting from the premiere is a confusion as to why Picard would quit Starfleet and sit around doing nothing but writing history books and getting all grumpy in the meantime. And then that was accentuated when, they were like, why wouldn't he call Rafi back, after all this went on? And they're sort of explaining it backwards. So they're presenting, I think I think it's giving me more confidence in the writing, in the sense that it's not that they portrayed Picard incorrectly or uncharacteristically at the beginning. The audience is supposed to take his uncharacteristic behavior as a clue as to what's going on with him. Something has happened to him. Yes, this is not how you would expect Picard to act.
So they're giving you little pieces.
So as the season is going on, you're getting clues as to being like, oh, okay, I'm starting to understand. Like, this guy's been fucked over.
Well, so I mean, but do you think there's something more we don't know, or because
I think so?
Yeah,
because
there's going to be more that we don't know. And
they. In the last episode at the beginning, the reason when she was saying, let's do something crazy, let's do some crazy shit. And he was like, we did some crazy shit. I threatened to leave and they said, go fuck off, you know? And so that alone, because this show is also talking about how, sort of focusing on how Picard, he doesn't get to have his way anymore, you know?
Yes.
It comes off, he almost comes off as self-entitled now, even though he's not, because he did get his way before. Yeah. He always saved the day, and everyone let him do what the fuck he want. He was put on this sort of elite, like this pedestal, you know, pedestal. And so he's basically, his character was as close to enlightenment, right, as you could get. He wasn't just powerful, right, because that's not enough. He was also wise. So he was this great figure, and then everyone looked up to him, and now suddenly they don't, and he almost comes off as foolish in a way. Even that's foolish, maybe as strong of a word, but he's coming off as human.
Because he's like, hey guys, I'm Jean-Luc Picard, and everybody's like,
yeah, right, yeah.
They either don't care or they're like,
are
fuck
you serious,
you.
Yeah,
dude?
right.
Like,
Oh man,
you again? Like,
yeah. So it's kind of like his ego has just been totally destroyed now. And from that one act, I mean, and if this is what they're going with, when they denied, like when they said, okay, you leave, we're going to keep doing what we do, you leave. It's almost like that completely shattered his ego or something. And so even though he was so strong, it's one bit of humanity sort of displayed by him. It all kind of unravels in a way.
It's a reality check for him.
Right. And that's what a lot of this show is sort of doing more and more of. Every episode, there's examples of that happening.
Because he quit Starfleet thinking that would get his way. It didn't. That's the first thing that happened. And in his mind, he went into sort of this 14-year private seclusion of the sorts, and thinking the whole time like, I bet they're pissed that they don't have me around, kind of thing.
I'm fantasizing about being back with Data, even though Data is dead, but still.
And then when he gets this new mission, he's now learning, as you note, step by step, that he can't simply re-enter his previous mode. Anything that he's going to do, he has to earn back.
Right.
And what help he's gotten has been, in terms of Rios, he hired him. In terms of Rafi, he basically, like, you know, she's got her own agenda going, and he's taking advantage of that. Jurati, presumably horrifically brainwashed, or some fucking shit's going on there.
She's got another function.
I like the character. I think she's been great for some of the humor and the.
She adds levity, and she's almost like the audience's voice as well.
Yeah,
you know?
that's a good point.
She does the whole express what we're kind of thinking, like in the last episode when you pointed out Jesse, when she's like, "Who are you, lady?
Right. Who are you, lady?
Lady, who are you?" You know, and then
and this one, she's all bored in space. She's like, "I read all these articles and I watered your plants.
Right.
I was going to watch something, but you just had a bunch of Klingon opera."
Right.
I like it. He's all like, long story. He's like, there's a long, you know. She's like, all I could find is Klingon opera. And he's like, it's a long story.
Yeah, right. And then also when she was talking about how the absolute candor was like, doesn't that sound like kind of so sort of bringing this sort of reality to the fantasy, which I think is the interesting role that she's. It's kind of switched gears. I didn't expect her to head in that direction.
Yeah.
So,
right. Yeah.
I guess like what other function does she have right now on the ship? She doesn't really have any.
Yeah, because we haven't encountered any synths. We haven't needed her expertise yet.
When you first meet her, she's going to be the expert on something, and we're just seeing her like she's tagging along. She's never been to space before.
She's bored.
She's not actually in her element, and you know she's
right.
She's more like us. Yeah.
So that's a good point. Right. So that's until she is useful, she's got to have some sort of way to express her position, and that's true. It is kind of like us watching these space people going around doing awesome space things like flying space planes and Patrick, what you were saying, right? Also, Elnor, Picard only has him presumably.
Yes, I forgot to mention.
I think I interrupted you.
No, he's he's taking advantage of a previous relationship, and Elnor calls him out on it.
Yeah,
and Picard doesn't say he's wrong.
Yeah.
Back to the point of Picard sort of looking human and almost like entitled. He's also surprisingly tone deaf. For it's like talking to Elnor. He has no sort of when Elnor offers him something, he's like, no, it's fine, Elnor. And he gets pissed, and Picard's like, what's up his ass? And then like he's talking like Elnor's like, why do you need me though? Me, you need someone, but why me? He's like, well, because you're young and strong, and I'm old and can't do shit, And so, yeah, of course it's gonna like, come on, man. You don't know that.
And I don't even. And that particular thing is not necessarily out of character for Picard because he had a tradition. He never wanted to go to cocktail parties and all that. He was uncomfortable in those types of situations. He liked being on a mission and reading.
Riker was supposed to protect him in case he said something stupid around children. Farpoint, right? So, so Elnor, right? They did address the fact that Elnor's a little bitter about it, but that almost accentuated the fact that Picard only has him because of some kind of oath that he has to take.
Well, okay, so here's another example. Like I was talking about how the previews are misleading. One of the scenes in the preview was Picard talking to this elf guy saying, "Will you bind your sword to my quest?"
Yeah.
And out of context, it's like, what the fuck is going on here? Yeah. But in the episode, it's like, oh, it's 100% makes sense. It's not like this is the whole. It's just he says that at the very end to be kind of add in the little extra thing, which probably worked in the end. Kind of speaking his language, speaking in the literary language of the Three Musketeers.
Yeah, tricky with their cuts of their previews and their recaps. Like as you pointed out, that Shaban being saying, what was it? So you need someone who hates you.
Yeah, I know. Right? You need help. You need somebody who fucking hates your fucking guts.
Yeah, and out of context, you're like, come on, Shaban, what the fuck?
But I like it. It's clever. I mean, in most cases, it's clever. In some cases, clearly, it's just they're trying to save some time.
No, it's cool.
But I do think it's interesting because it gives you that flavor and that taste of like, ooh, we're going to see Picard, but you don't actually know what's happening, so it doesn't give anything away. I didn't see this whole Romulan anti-human thing going on. Tell me, what did you guys think about that scene where after Picard talks to Elnor and then he goes into that Romulan bar, takes the sign off, and just
starts some shit like he almost gets killed. He only doesn't die because Elnor steps in and cuts the dude's head off.
I'm assuming that Picard was counting on Elnor doing something, right?
Right.
That's all it could be, but still, that's a thing.
But it's pretty.
That was a strong bluff.
Yeah,
that was a strong bluff. It made me
is.
think of poker and Data and them playing poker around the table and stuff. He was fucking bluffing.
And what's interesting,
because that was a ridiculous.
The first time I saw it, I didn't get that vibe. The second time, I got a little bit more like maybe he was putting himself in a position where he was just trying to have that last little thing to get Elnor. He probably figured Elnor was going to watch him. But the first time I saw it, I didn't even catch that, and I was thinking. It's also justifiable just to say, he's an old dude. He doesn't want to see this shit. It's kind of like right now, if you have like some assholes in some bar that put up a sign that says like no blacks or no Spanish or something. Mm-hmm. But it's that kind of thing where it's just kind of like, you know what? I got nothing to lose at this point. Fuck you guys. I'm going to dare you to beat up an old man to enforce your bullshit policy.
So he's just so disgusted by what the planet's turned into.
And I think both are true. I think both are. I agree. He probably was trying to lure Elnor into his cause, but simultaneously, I mean, he was sincere about being. Like,
he was
fuck
trying
you
to talk
guys.
to everybody, and they were just kind of staring at him and just being like,
that Romulan senator dude was kind of a badass, though.
Yeah. Yeah. I even pointed out
some badass sabers pulled out.
He said, you gave up. He even called. Everyone's calling out Picard for giving up. Yeah, they pulled out that sword. I was actually a little worried for a second because when Elnor came out and did that badass chop the head off thing, where the head sits there for a second and then it falls off. But actually, the part that had me gotten, I was a little worried because Picard reacted when it happened, right? But it didn't seem like much of a reaction. He was more just kind of like, oh shit, And I was thinking, are they just going to let this by that he just fucking killed some guy? Are they just going to like let it pass by as some cool action or something like that?
Yeah.
But then I was relieved. No, when they got back to the ship and then Picard like lost his mind and was like super pissed off. I was like, okay, good. For a second I thought that his sort of shocked reaction was all we were going to get out of that whole like killing thing, and then they were just going to move on. Right. So I'm glad they went by, and it. He ended up flipping out at Elnor and being like, "Don't fucking do that shit."
Then he did the oath thing.
And he did the oath.
Yeah.
You know that funny that book open oath thing. That thing, it didn't look nearly as appropriate when done in anger. When he did it in anger,
Yeah, Picard was all like,
yeah, it looked a little forced there. I don't know, but yeah. So I guess it turns out he was just didn't react when they were down there because he had to keep his cool and make it like seem smooth. But yeah.
Well, and this is an example of how.
So it was good. He freaked out.
We're following Picard and he's our hero, but Picard is standing there listening to the senator and he doesn't disagree with anything the senator's saying. Now, he disagrees with the interpretation. The senator is acting as if it was more of a plot of the Federation and the Federation was taking advantage of them. Picard probably would disagree with that assessment, but not with the facts on the ground, which was that the Federation agreed to do something and then they reneged on that agreement, right? And so that's why he was pissed when Elnor killed the guy, because yes, the guy was about to kill him and was threatening him, but he was not doing so from a bad perspective. You know,
Right.
He had a reason to hate Picard from his own viewpoint of events.
Yeah, and the Qowat Milat, the Qowat Milat.
I'm getting hungry, man. This sounds like some Greek food.
It's good.
Like something with sesame seeds and honey.
So
Word it does.
Some sort of like not
Kinda-
baklava,
Some kind of crunchy, sticky
but
stuff.
like some sort
kind
of
of-
version of baklava that has like Wheaties in it,
Right.
like some
Baklava.
It's
Wheaties.
Qowat Milat.
some kind of tabbouleh dip. Tabbouli's not a dip. What do you
Nah.
call tabbouleh though? What do you
It's
put?
like, tabbouleh is a salad.
It's a salad.
It's a cilantro
Okay.
salad.
Yeah, I mean I know what it is, but
It's a salad.
It's a salad. It's a fucking salad.
It's funny that
Not a dip.
it's funny that
I'm a dipping sauce.
in this
It's my
episode,
dipping sauce.
Dan decides to peek out on the word salad.
It's a salad. How does that happen? Find out. Yeah, I worked at an Italian restaurant when there was this bread they would give you, and it had this tomatoes and balsamic vinegar and all this stuff for the bread, and people would be like, "Can I have some of that delicious dipping sauce?" And it didn't bother me, but people in the restaurant would be like, "Ugh, it's not a dipping sauce." Ugh, these fucking people.
Did you spit in their food then?
All the time. That's all servers ever did, all day long, which take giant diarrheas in their fucking Coke. And they didn't notice. Nobody ever noticed.
Actually, parsley. I think I said cilantro. It's parsley.
Parsley, yeah,
They're just
it is
kind of
parsley.
similar.
For the record, I've never seen anyone spit in their food.
Never, ever.
For real though. So, but I was saying about your point about the senator, and I didn't think about that. But it's true because earlier the Qowat Milat, they didn't give her name. They did give her name. The main Qowat Milat he talked to.
Yeah, she had a name.
I don't recall it.
Yeah, but
I forget what it was.
but there was a line about he was making. What was it? The enemy is perfection is the enemy of whatever that line is.
He allowed perfection to become the enemy of the good.
Yes,
is what
right.
it's saying.
You'd actually use that. You were actually talking about that like weeks ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, so and that's along the same thing because she addresses the fact that he kind of abandoned them. You know, she didn't do it in an angry way. She was just.
she also said a promise is a prison.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then he brought her some candies, and she was like, "Fuck that! I'll abandon my philosophy for getting some tasty candies."
So I guess there was a general consensus.
I'm a refugee.
Some general consensus given that he kind of did sort of abandon them. Even he admits it, and so she points it out, and then the senator points it out. And I hadn't thought about that as.
And then he admits it at the end of the episode. I mean, at the end of his time on the planet. What was it? Vashti, I think was the name of the planet. And he has stated as much before, but in the
Vashti.
opening episode in Remembrance, in the first episode, he talks about how the Federation and Starfleet, they were the ones that failed. He's talking about them failing, right? In this episode, he's now pulled it back onto himself. He says, we failed you, I failed you, which is a very different thing than he did in the past. Previously. So he seems to be growing into taking on the failure as his own failure in addition to the failure of the Federation.
But they're not really clear on how he failed them. Yes, it's obvious how Starfleet failed him because they ended the rescue mission, but what more could Picard have done? And they
We're
kept
probably
talking
going to find out. Yeah.
But also,
she did talk about like you could. She was implying that you could have done more, but because you couldn't do everything, you did nothing.
My
So maybe we'll find
interpretation,
out.
my interpretation was merely, and I think we keep getting back to this. Multiple people have mentioned this, that he simply receded. And he didn't
Yeah.
contact Rafi. He didn't contact
Yeah.
Elnor. He didn't reach out to them over subspace and
just
say,
went
"How
back
you
to
doing?"
France and-
He closed in,
Looked at
and
some underpants.
he gave up his commission, and after that, seemed to just become isolated. Remember, they called him the Hermit of Labar. So he, by all accounts, for people who were into him and people who were against him, everyone was in agreement that Picard had decided to go wrap himself up in a cocoon with his wine grapes and just hide away.
Yeah.
There's a place in France where naked people dance.
There's a whole hole in your butt.
Hole in the wall.
Oh, it's in the wall. Got that part. I always miss up that part.
But anyway, so that covers most of the stuff with Picard on the planet, right? And before we get to the end bit, which is really cool, look, we should go over the what's now turning out. Really, they've structured this season. It's become clear now. There's an A story and a B story, right? So traditionally, a lot of the old Star Trek shows, most of the episodes were structured as an A plot and a B plot, sometimes a C plot. And you know, they would have, you know, the B plot would usually be something whatever. B plot. This season seems to be set up like sort of the A plot is Picard going in this one direction, and the B plot is the Narek, Soji, Borg, etc. stuff, right?
The art of
Well, there's also, I guess you could call it a C plot, is the general, interactions that go on with the ship. Like when Jurati, the scene after the first time they're on Vashti, when he leaves Vashti for the first time, I guess.
when she's talking to Rios.
Where she's talking about Rios. Yeah, she was talking about how he's like into paper books. There's a whole lot of, they keep talking about paper books.
Yeah.
And I mean, it sounded like, and I don't want to be like, but it sounded like she kind of had an interest in Rios in a way. You know,
Probably.
she's commenting on like, "Oh, you're reading books. I used to live with a guy who read books."
I'll tell you, I have an interest in Rios and all his holograms.
Yeah.
I want them all. I want to be in a room with all of them at once.
We got to see like a couple more, because then there's like the one with like the weird American accent, and he's like the hospitality hologram.
I really fucking love that.
That was hilarious. It's
I
like,
love
when
that.
do you have a hospitality emergency?
I love that hologram, and I love the timing. This is a good place to comment that Jonathan Frakes directed this episode, and he's a fantastic director, especially with sort of inserting the comedic elements through editing and things. The timing of Rios being like, "I fucking hate that hospitality hologram," and then cut. You know, it was just really well. It was a really greatly timed scene.
Oh, that was when Raffi, she's talking about like they've learned that Picard is stopping by Vashti, right? That was around that.
Yeah, that was right then.
She says a line, it says, "Man can't even take a guilt trip without using a starship."
Yeah.
It should have been, "Man can't even use a starship without taking a guilt trip." I think they had it wrong.
No.
Yeah, because...
No, I like it the way it is.
No, because it's like, he can't even get on a starship without taking a guilt trip. Like...
I was thinking of
He can take
he's on a guilt trip, and then he requires a starship
He's
for
gotta
it.
use
his
the
his guilt
starship.
trip is so intense that he needs a fucking
Okay.
starship in order
Jean-Luc
to.
Picard.
I see it. I was seeing it more like he's got to take
Your way
a
works, too.
guilt trip in any situation. No, it's fine. No, that works. No.
That's an interesting thing to bring up, though, because you're right. It does work in a different order like that.
I also wanted about
Basic math.
but with Jurati and Rios. I'm just kidding. I'm just playing with
Why are you
you.
doing that?
Why are you doing that? I was also gonna say they were playing some song in the background. Do you remember?
Yeah.
There was-
He's listening to some kind of like doo-wop.
It
I
was-
want
it's-
to know what song it is.
It is.
Yeah.
There Must Be a Way by the cabaret. How it's listed is cabarets / matadors. I think it's cabarets with the matadors.
Is it an
So I
old
think there's
song?
a cabarets and there's a matadors.
That's definitely like some kind of 50s tune.
Because I want to pop that song on and smoke some vape some snake leaf
Yeah.
and enjoy that.
I think I actually
philosophy.
tagged it, so I probably have
that's
it.
good.
But
That's good.
when she was talking about the paper book thing too, she was talking about like living with a guy who's paper book, and she was talking about it was her dad. So she's totally got to have the hots for Rios,
exactly.
you know, because
Yeah.
she's talking about, you know, it's like whole.
Okay, crazy
Acting.
theory. Any thoughts? She worked for Maddox. Do you think Maddox is her dad?
Oh, that could be.
No particular evidence for that. I'm just wondering. She's on this trip. Maybe she was brainwashed or mind melded. or
There's
something
no
by
reason
O.
not to think that.
But she's got some motivation. My point has been since last week. There's some other motivation here
Because she was talking to
Then
those
she likes
Starfleet
synths.
people, but we didn't see what happened in the meeting, and all of a sudden she was like, "I gotta go."
Exactly. And she had a gun and she's shooting Romulans.
Yeah.
So her motivation went from totally knowing that these synths were out there, totally knowing that Picard wanted to find Maddox and the synths, totally knowing all these things and chilling on a bench eating lunch, to murdering people.
Yeah, that
and
was the sketchiest thing,
and
the murdering
insisting
part.
that she goes on this thing. I don't know. Now, granted, she knew he was looking to Maddox, so maybe she caught wind that maybe that's what. Because I think because when I was revisiting my thinking from last week, she knew about Picard's interest in Maddox, but she also knew he really wanted to find this Soji person, right? Maybe her interest really peaked when O said he's going after Maddox. So maybe she's like, oh, okay, I want to find Maddox. Now, it could be, who knows, maybe she was Maddox's lover or so. I don't know. I think there's something going on there.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly plausible. 1962, by the way. I think that's
cool.
I think that's what the date of that song was. So
It's a
Right
date.
on.
yeah, that hospitality thing. So what was he saying? He was basically included as sort of the base luxury features of the ship. Is that what the?
He implied he came with the ship.
Yeah, he came with the ship, like air conditioning or something like that.
And there was the other, like the pilot hologram.
The pilot hologram ruled.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he looked like Aquaman or
And
something.
he was like, he was all shaggy.
Yeah, he was. He didn't look
And
like
didn't speak English.
He was just
That
speaking
pretty
Spanish
cool.
the whole time.
Yeah.
What was? Why am I forgetting that guy's name?
it was like,
Momoa, Jason Momoa.
Right, yeah,
he
he's
looked
that
more
kind
like
of
the
Momoa
Aquaman
look.
Momoa than the Game of Thrones Dothraki Momoa.
Right.
He looked like something out of, From Dusk Till Dawn or something.
Oh yeah, like from Dusk Till Dawn, or he acted as a Wookiee type character or something. But yeah, he did look like from Dusk Till Dawn.
I didn't think about the Wookiee thing. That's
I just thought of the co-pilot that didn't speak the language everyone else
Yeah,
did. Although I don't know why I
that's
went
cool.
to
I didn't think
Wookiee. I don't know.
Well, that's the most obvious.
I'm totally 100% delighted by this whole hologram business. I think it's
Yeah,
hilarious.
it's great because it adds this unpredictable thing. It's like, who are we going to see next? You know?
And it's got to be such a joy for this actor to be able to get to play all these different versions of himself in such a hilarious fashion with all the sexual tension that goes along.
Yeah, he loves him. He wants to have sex with all of his own holograms. Now, I would imagine.
Me too.
I would imagine those holograms that came with the ship. I mean, it's not like they're supposed to be modeled after the captain. He had to have chosen that, right?
I'm presuming as much. Well, I think it's just such a great evolution of the whole EMH kind of concept where it's like, where are you going to take that next? And I'm sure people would have considered being like more rights or slavery or this, that. And it's like, no, it's just some lunatic dude who's just got a bunch of copies of himself strewn about the ship and he's annoyed with all of them.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
He seems to like this one. He seems to like the I don't even know. They didn't really name him, I don't think. I guess he's the pilot, shooter, tactical.
Elliot or El. It was
They called it Emmett.
Emmett.
Emmett. And but he seems to like him better than the others, but he's also like annoyed at him for not, shooting at the people adequately and things. So he's still complaining, even though he seems to get along with this guy a little bit better.
When during the scene of the fight, during the fighting, Picard is like starts giving orders, and then Picard learns this time around that he's not supposed to be. He's not the captain of the ship. So he's finally kind of learning that he's not top dog and everything. And then of course Raffi sort of says, okay, yeah, let's do that. Now, do you think there's a subtle nod though to the previous episode when Picard goes engage? Because Picard had to do engage because it had
he was
to
given permission in that case. The guy was like, huh? He did that thing with his hands that I will vocalize by going, blah, blah.
Did he give him permission to say engage in the previous
Yeah, he sort of looked at him and waved his hands in his direction. That's why I made the sound blah.
Because they had to do that for dramatic. He had to say engage, obviously. So I don't know. But now Picard's got to stand back. They had to let him say engage, and now I guess he's got to stand back. Although he'll probably let Picard do some shit.
Oh yeah, at some point.
Do some.
In fact, Picard may have to take over at some point. It might be a whole plot point because maybe Rios is going to be tied up doing something else, and all his holograms are going to be busy too.
Do you think they're that used? I mean, all that cigar smoke in the future has got to bug them out a little bit because there's not that much cigar. There's not that much cigar smoke in the future.
It's probably synth cigar stuff.
Yeah,
they got
It's probably really clean cigars.
Yeah.
or hollow cigars or whatever.
Cigars. You don't want to have no hollow cigar. Get air pockets.
You can put weed in it.
Put weed in your
It's
hollow
called the
cigar.
blunt, colloquially.
You smoke it like a cigarette.
You smoke it like a cigar, but you inhale like a
Marijuana cigarette.
snake leaf.
Reefers.
Snake leaf.
Snake leaf, that's right. Snake leaf.
So the Romulan ship, I know we've skipped over the whole Borg business. We'll get back to that. But the Romulan, I just got to say, that Romulan bird of prey, they called it a bird of prey, which they're supposed to. Because in the canon of Star Trek, the hilarious thing was it was a Romulan bird of prey, and then later they had the Klingon birds of prey.
Right.
And then they had to sort of retcon that in the head canon to be like, well, it's because the Klingons sort of they teamed up with the Romulans for a while back in the day, and they got the cloaking technology, and they got the quote-unquote bird of prey nomenclature. But that I'm glad they like went heavy into it. They're like, no, that's a fucking Romulan bird of prey. That's like an antique fucking Romulan bird of prey, which is exactly the kind of thing that some warlord could make use of. Totally useless if you're going to be in sort of normal Federation, like whatever. But they're making the point. They're like, this guy can get away with this because this is some like backwoods kind of shit.
I was actually thinking for a moment about that when it was bird of prey. I was like, wait a minute, bird of prey, is that Romulan?
They got them. Both of them got them.
Both of them got some birds. Now
Birds.
Now is this Cantar or whatever Qalankhkai?
It's like Jabba the Hutt.
Yeah, that's what I was. Is he a space gangster?
Yeah,
Or
that's
is he?
the implication that I got
yeah.
is that he's like a space gangster.
I think Jabba the Hutt could get his hands on some better goods though than this guy, this Cantar.
Well, maybe, but this is the way I
He
took
had
it.
better resources.
The way I took it is this is a gangster working in this small sector, and he can
Right.
get away with it because there's the quote unquote the Fenris Rangers, which I'm guessing we're going to find out. Seven
there's
of
gonna be-
9 is a member of.
Or they go to like, oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. I was thinking maybe there'll be some on Free Cloud, some sort of rogue one that's now some kind of shogun, or not shogun. What's it called? The samurai that
Ronin.
Ronin.
Yeah, some kind of Ronin ranger or something
Word.
like that.
And so I buy, and not only do I buy into it, we've seen this before in Deep Space Nine, where there were plenty of places where, for example, the Orion Syndicate was able to run the show. Now, the Orion Syndicate can't go heads up against the Federation or against the Romulans or against the Klingons, but there are plenty of pockets. We are led to believe throughout all of Star Trek lore that there are plenty of pockets of space that are not well managed. They're outside of the zone of influence of all these people, and one can presume that after the fall of the Romulan Empire, that the result would be a power vacuum, which they state explicitly here, that yes, the Romulan Empire is gone, but since the Federation, the Klingons, other people did not come in to sort of manage this area, the Federation just abandoned it all. And then obviously what's going to happen is it's what happened in Russia after the Soviet Union
In
fell,
Detroit.
etc. What happened in Detroit? What happens is that you get other groups that come in, and they can be, some can be benevolent, some can be not, but the idea being is that these are not, under the control of our standard set of heroes that we're used to, which is fantastic because now we're going to get to see more of that area. One of my favorite episodes of Deep Space Nine is the one where O'Brien has to go undercover and he's working with people who are associated with the Orion Syndicate. And it's one of the first times you really get to see the sort of seedy underbelly of the edges of Federation space where they don't really have sway and the kinds of things that people have to deal with out there.
Yeah, and that brings the whole sort of space western idea in, the sort of frontier sort of, and I guess this is the opposite of the frontier. This is a place that was colonized and abandoned, but it's still that idea of just sort of a lawless land, and that's always thought that was interesting. How they have that sort of space western, like Firefly. Obviously, that was that.
I was
did that
thinking
a lot.
it's very Firefly vibes along the way here.
I always think that's cool how they can cross that over like that. What was the episode of DS9? No, not DS9. Or was it TNG where Worf is with Alexander. I was just thinking about the Klingon opera. And they go to some planet, and then there's some kind of street performance of some Klingon opera, and then Alexander gets involved in the street performance because all Klingons know this. It's like the story of Kalis or something like that, and they do some kind of opera street performance, and then everyone knows how to reenact this stuff. So Worf's like, "Go ahead, Alexander, do it." And they do the chom chom chom, and they do the chum with the bat lifts and they're like chung chung, and they're all singing that Klingon music. It's all like,
I have to apologize.
blah, 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 blah.
Gotta apologize to the audience for this. This is
A little bit racist.
clearly racist. Racist against Klingons. And Dan does not mean it. We're doing our best.
I'm just trying to. It's just what they sound like. Jeez, it's just how they sound.
We are eager to be woke.
Is an impression
working on it.
racist? It's just how they sound.
When they went like deeble dooble.
But on Discovery, they
Bat
sound
lip, Jim
they
Chow,
sound
bat
different.
lip.
Do
Yeah. Lampu, Andor lampu, Umantu, lampu. Kalish.
Kalish.
Yeah, I say Kalish. They do the hard sh in that one. I just was thinking about Klingon opera is really hard to listen to, right? I mean, I'm sure it's awesome.
I
but
dig on the Klingon opera.
I
That
got-
was very limited what we've heard.
Maybe it's like Pink Floyd, where I just got to hear the whole album a few times or something. But
you
I
gotta
just,
drink some Targ blood and have some gach.
Targ blood and some gag.
Some fresh gach.
Didn't Nickelodeon release gag?
I gotta say,
gag. Oh.
we're totally off topic compared to Picard here, but you just put the image of my mind. You know, we've seen gach before, and he's usually all wriggling and stuff. And
It's
then,
like the maggots.
but
or
what's
worms.
funny is
Noodles.
Yamak
they
sauce.
when they first
Yamak
introduce
sauce.
gach, it's all wriggling and horrifying. And you're supposed to be horrified by it, but then eventually you get used to it culturally, so that when you see some like non-wriggling gach, you're like, oh, gross. You're like, what the fuck? That's fucking dead gach. What kind of shit are you
We're
trying to serve me?
some dead gog to send it back.
What kind of
true.
joint is this? Are you a fucking Bolian? What the fuck?
It's true. Good old gawk. I would try it.
But that I again, more props to the writers, props to Jonathan Frakes. I thought that the whole end sequence to this episode was kind of cool because they're attacked by this warlord guy. I presume this is not the last we'll necessarily see of this person, because I know they cut the fucking wing off of that thing.
That fucked him up.
I saw a great comment on Reddit because it encapsulated the feeling I had, because I didn't know how to explain it when I saw that fucking wing get sheared off. Somebody on Reddit said it was like seeing a classic car get in a car wreck, where, yeah, they're the bad guys. You want the good guys to escape, but it was this sort of beautiful classic machine. And you're like, no, that's horrible. Well,
Yeah.
could you just disable it? Shoot its impulse engines or something?
Yeah, it really sliced through that thing too. Right.
Yeah, I think it meant to also accentuate the fact it is indeed an old ship. So even though it can push people around who don't have much going on, it can't handle every situation.
And the ship that Seven of Nine was flying, she pulled that maneuver that I remember first really noticing in Battlestar Galactica when they were doing with the
Yeah.
small ships, where they do that turnaround, the space turnaround. Whereas you don't have to like do these arcing long turnarounds like you would in an atmosphere, right, with like heavy gravity and stuff. So they do the thing where they just use their momentum to kind of flip them around. It was like a combination of that, where she kind of flipped the butt around and then put on some brakes and did a fast spin. I always thought that was a neat maneuver that. They just there's these sort of space tactics. It's neat when they see like fighter pilots doing different things in space because of like.
And Battlestar was
the
groundbreaking with that stuff. And I
Yeah.
agree. I think this was a good sort of utilization of that that you don't see too much of in the Star Trek universe. They tried to do a little bit in Deep Space Nine, but they were limited in just quite literally with the technology available at the time. They couldn't do too much with that. So.
I'm trying to remember
the 3D kind of battles nowadays.
Yeah. Well, right. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I can't remember which Star Trek movie was the first I remember them actually. It might have even been Generations, where they did the thing where the ships were perpendicular to each other and one shot up through the Enterprise's disk section, and they're always on an even plane. Why aren't there more 3D stuff?
Yeah.
Um,
Especially since in Star Trek 2, the whole climax was based on the fact that Khan was thinking two-dimensionally, and then they hid below them and then rose up and then zap, 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 zap.
He sure wasn't thinking fourth dimensionally.
Yeah, 4D, 5D film.
Yeah. I'm going to run into those Indians. Marty. Marty.
Those Indians won't even be there.
Yeah, I have a real problem with it.
And the gag was those Indians totally were there.
Yeah, they were.
They were totally there.
What a great movie.
He's like, oh shit, the cavalry.
That's right.
Clint Eastwood.
What the name is that? I can't remember the line. This back. Senator. His name was Temkin Adrev or Temkin Adrev or something like that. And he was talking about Wallenberg class transports. Wallenberg class transports is what they use.
Do you know who that's named after?
I knew it had to be named after someone of note. But no, I don't.
Raoul, I think is Raoul Wallenberg, who is a Swiss banker and financier. The Wallenberg family is some hugely rich, famous, family going back hundreds of years or something. And in World War II, he's credited with saving the lives of tens of thousands of Jews towards the end of the war.
Nice.
Like 1943, 44, 45. Through various schemes of his, he came up with all these various crazy schemes about how to basically smuggle Jews into safer locations or protect them until the war was over. So I'm 100% certain that those transports, because they were used to save people, refugees, from the quite literal definition of a Holocaust, which is the total incineration of something, right? That's where the term comes from. So their Romulus was going to be incinerated. So they were rescued by the Wallenberg class transports.
Okay.
Apparently, I haven't read there's a whole series of, not a whole series, it's a few issues of a comic book series called, I think it's The Countdown or something like that, but it's like, I could have that wrong, but it's the kind of a comic books that tell some of the story, that fill in the story in those, what happened with the thing with Romulus and the synths and everything. So
Cool.
there's probably more information about, like, because remember, one of the plot points is they're already rescuing Romulans, right? So Picard is in the act of rescuing Romulans when the synths attack Mars, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
But when the synths attack Mars, one of the problems is that the Mars, the Utopia Planitia shipyards, are building a bunch of these Wallenberg class ships. Like, they don't call them that at the time, but the point is that they're working overtime to build these ships to help increase the capacity of the rescue effort. And the synths attack and destroy all that shit, and that's when the Federation is like, all right, fuck this. Because, Picard in the last episode, when he's talking to Raffi in the flashback, he's saying, yeah, okay, these ships are destroyed, but we still can get these ships and we have some reserve ships. And Raffi is explaining, like, yeah, you told them, right, that we can still get a lot of people saved. And that's part of Picard's problem, is that they don't even want to try that. Picard was like, all right, we had this setback, but we still can do what we can. And the Federation was like, no, we're cutting fucking loose.
Yeah.
And that's when he stopped communicating with everybody on Vashti and the Romulans, the Raffi, everybody.
If they release more information about that, I just have to assume it's because his ego is just destroyed, that they would let him go rather than listen to like Picard is like giving his, like, come on guys, I'm for real this time, and they were like, we don't care, fuck off. I have to think so far that that's the reason he's totally fucked up. Unless they release more stuff about it.
Yeah.
I think another way to look at it is, psychologically, everything about Picard is wrapped up in his role as a Starfleet officer. When in TNG, after he's recovers from being Locutus of Borg, he goes back to his family vineyard. That's the first time we see the vineyard. And he has this whole argument with his brother that boils over basically that he left the vineyard, and Picard's trying to say, this is what I am. This is who I am. I'm a Starfleet officer. We see variations on that throughout the series and the movies, that his identity is of a Starfleet officer. That is the vessel through which he does action. That's how he has all these motivations internally, but the mechanism, the medium through which he accomplishes, his, or fulfills his motivations, is through the role of being a Starfleet officer. When he is no longer a Starfleet officer, it is not surprising, when you think about it, that his reaction would be to simply do nothing.
Yeah.
Because
he doesn't know what to do
he
anymore.
only knew to do things through that.
Yeah.
This show is showing him, seemingly for the first time that I can recall, certainly, acting totally separate from that Starfleet officer role.
So he's lost or something.
Yeah, and he's finding himself. He's finding a new version of himself. And he's finding that he doesn't need that necessarily to accomplish what he wants to accomplish. And he's doing it by very reluctantly along the way. But he's been forced into it because of his decision that Daj is worth avenging. I still don't think she's dead. And that Soji is worth finding and saving.
Yeah, so it seems evident that he's going to, just going off of how things go, he's going to prove that he's the good old Picard we know, but like he's finding he has to sort of re-earn that position, and he has to go through that journey again. So it's watching him sort of like go through this journey.
Quick question.
Yes.
If you have the ashes of a loved one or a pet, and somebody's playing ball in the house in the living room. They shouldn't be. But you know how kids are. You know how dogs are. Mm-hmm. You know how elderly people are who, sort of trip and grab onto something. Anyway.
Like an urn.
How it happens, it doesn't matter. The urn tips over and falls over. The lid falls off and the ashes go everywhere. When you put the ashes back, when you put the ashes back in, is that re-earning?
Re-earning?
Is that re-earning? Is that re-earning something?
Re-earning.
I apologize if this is a meaningless digression.
Re-earning.
Yeah,
because was it de-earned before?
Yeah, you de-earn by knocking the urn over, and then you re-earn it. Or does it have to be? Or does it have to be a new urn?
The ashes are sealed up in a bag that you can't really open without a great difficulty.
So what would
in the urn?
Yeah.
So what would they call?
That's usually like a TV thing where there's some sort of Chinese urn and you like open it up and you look inside but they're usually like all closed up. It's just an urn as a concept.
You've seen this?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I honestly don't know. I have seen ashes before, but I didn't.
I've seen
know.
ashes. I've seen urns, but I've never seen
them together.
Yeah.
So that's from the ashes perspective. What do you call it from the urn's perspective? When an urn's been emptied, it's been de-ashed, re-ashed,
de-ashed,
re-ashed.
That's a very good point about perspective. You don't want. No, it's true.
It's like Star Trek.
Yeah, we don't want to neglect. We don't want to neglect considering all the different perspectives because it could matter.
Re-earning.
Re-earning.
Re-earning sounds like it should be a different word already. That sounds like it should be a word like re-earning. Re-earning. Re-earning should sound like it should be a totally separate, unrelated word entirely.
Rihanna. Re-earning.
Rihanna's re-earning. Oh no!
Like the name of her next album.
I don't want to think about Rihanna having to be re-earned.
No, not her being re-earned. Her album is going to be called like Never mind.
Not her being re-earned.
Did you think it was interesting that
I'm sorry.
You go ahead.
I just wanted to real quick before we move on. Yeah. What was that? Like what? Before we move on.
I don't know. It made sense at the time.
Okay. No, it's different perspective. Star Trek. We'll go.
Star Trek.
Although I don't think you were.
Infinite diversity in infinite fucking combinations.
There you go. So Jesse,
did you think it was interesting? His quarters on the ship had all that sort of hologram action to make it look like his house in France, and when he can still look out at the window and look over his vineyard and be like, like why did he do that?
Well, it didn't even seem like he did it. It seemed like the emergency
the hologram guy just did that.
He said Jaban. He pronounced it Jaban weird.
Chiban. I think that the hospitality guy's whole deal is he's really needy or something.
And bored. I imagine he's bored.
Yeah, that too. Right.
And if Jaban sent him this hologramic thing, although it could be a production reason, maybe Patrick Stewart was just like, I don't want to fucking sit around in a goddamn plastic room all day. Can we have some excuse for us to have like meetings in my fucking study?
Yeah.
Now, I bet it's not that because honestly, they can produce anything they want to produce anywhere. And it's not like he was going far regardless. It was all filmed in Southern California, as far as I know, primarily, certainly. But it's now I'm only now thinking of this that is really maybe they're just trying to recreate the ready room vibe. Picard sitting at a desk, listening to people, asking questions, getting information.
For the longest time, I didn't put it together that the ready room was at the front right. Is that stage? Which is stage right? That's the audience's left, right?
No, it's the ready room on the show was at the right side of the screen.
Right side of the screen. That's what I'm trying to say.
The left side of the ship. If you were standing on the bridge, it's on the left.
So is that stage left then?
I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've trodden the board.
Isn't it from the audience's point of view?
That's what I can't remember. It's like port bow and stuff like that.
Anyway. Well, no, it's not like port bow, but
port bow is only weird when you're like when
starboard,
I was
starboard and
no. Port is always your left. And the ship's left.
What the point I'm making is
the ship's left.
The ship's left because when I rode crew and you say sit backwards, it was the most confusing shit in the world.
If you're pointing the other way, then it's always the port is always
the
one
point.
side.
So goes my point is that it's the thing, but depending on your perspective, Star Trek perspectives. Depending on your perspective, it's like which is it's basically amount to me forgetting which is which. Is starboard left or right?
Starboard is the right.
From which point of view?
From when you're looking straight from the ship.
Okay.
If you're looking at towards the bow.
So then what is stage left?
That's unrelated to ships.
No, that's totally related in the sense that you don't know, you're referring to something in a direction, but you don't know which direction it is.
Yeah, but the point is that if you say port, it's we know what you're saying because we know which direction the ship.
Because port is always one.
But none of us are theater actors.
But I'm just saying it's related because if you say stage right, it's always one fucking thing.
Yes,
it's the same fucking thing.
Yes,
just take out all the unnecessary bullshit.
What was the cartoon on USA where the guy was always like exit stage?
Left. Pinkley Doodle. Snagglepuss. Snagglepuss, I think.
Like the knockoff of Pink Panther, right?
Yeah, he kind of looked like, except he was like a theater Pink Panther, where Pink Panther was.
He talked.
Point I was getting at with all that was, I always thought the ready room was, like you said, if you're looking at the screen of the bridge, classic stance, I didn't realize it was to the front and to the right. It just never occurred to me. I just never thought about it.
That's the direction they always walked, though.
I just never put that together that's how it worked. It just never, I don't know, man. It just never, yeah, you're right. I'm fucking stupid.
You should have read the technical manual.
No, you're right, because if you had read the technical manual, you would have seen that they have the whole like cetacean area, like a part of the Enterprise D had big tanks where they had whales that did navigation.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
Like for real, it's like some crazy shit.
It's
that they
some
had
kind of it's like Medusans or something.
Something weird, yeah. And they had like dolphin people or something. There's all this stuff in the Star Trek like
that had nothing to do with Star Trek 4.
Yeah, nothing. Well,
Right,
yeah,
right.
I'm not.
Yeah.
In fact, I had never made the connection until you just mentioned that.
There's
Just now.
some kind of crazy aliens that are inside of the ship, and you don't really interact with them other than like
The implication being that the
computer.
Federation obviously would have races of creatures that were aquatic and have other things other than, and they wouldn't be able to just wander around the.
Right.
You know.
That's a good point.
So
but
Mnrrh, Narissa, Soji. We got to get through this. We got to talk
Okay.
about these things. There wasn't a lot in this episode. There were just a few discrete scenes. The main point being that Narek is trying to get in her head a little bit. Clearly, I think it's obvious from last week. His whole deal is that he thinks his sister's a moron and was dumb to like just trying to go kidnap Daj. They saw what happened, so he's trying to get into Soji's head a little bit without triggering any defense mechanisms.
right.
Right.
So
you don't want her to activate.
So there was the part where he goes up to her and he starts. She's like, have you been following me? He's like, no, not how you think or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, at one point he what's that whole thing about before May 12th, 2396? Because it's referring to, he's like, you speak Romulan really well, right? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, you learned it sometime, she's like, I learned it in school or blah, blah, blah. He's like, that was sometime before May 12th, 2396. And she's like, so you have been following me. Now, her memories are supposedly 3 years old, right? What year does this take place?
99.
99. So I was thinking, was that like obviously it was a planted memory, but was that a memory planted that took place before she was supposedly born? You know what I mean? Like, was she born after that memory was supposed to have taken place?
Yeah.
Or was she programmed with all that shit, and then the only reason May 12th sticks out is because that's when she was shipped in a box off to the place? Because he said they can't find any record. He couldn't find her record on the manifest or whatever, the ship's manifest. So she thinks he's calling her a liar, right? Because he's like, well, I didn't see your record on the manifest, and she's like, you call me a liar?
He wants her to go look it up.
And he doesn't, right? Because he didn't call her a liar, but she was like, are you calling me a liar? She thought he was calling her a liar, but what he was really doing is he's like, I don't trust your memory.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between a liar and someone with a bad memory? You know what I mean? So they both accomplish the same result, is they're not telling the truth.
I think his real goal is...
So he was, anyways, I was just saying he was just fucking with her there, and he's trying to maybe trick her into giving him information, but not push her too hard, I guess.
I think there's that, and I think the other thing, subtly, is he wants her to go look this information up. He wants to set her on the path to discovering this on her own. Similar in, I mean, not exactly the same way it worked with Picard, because Picard just sort of laid it out to Daj, but at that point Daj had already been activated and a bunch of weird shit had already happened to her, so Picard was basically just like pointing out bullet points like, hey, here are the bullet points of some weird bizarre shit that's happened to you that doesn't square if you're a normal human. You did a bunch of crazy shit, right? Soji hasn't had that experience yet, and in fact, that's probably it's good from Narrek's perspective that he hasn't. I think he wants to set her on the road. She's going to look up this public record. He made that point. He's like, this is a public record. I looked it up. You're not on there. She's going to be like, fuck that dude. She's going to go look it up. She's going to be like, I'm not on there. And then what do you do next? She's a clever and inquisitive person.
Right.
She's going to go to the next step, which is like, well, why aren't I listed there?
So you don't think he knows and is showing off the fact that he read her, like there's some kind of memory plant file that was like, we planted these memories in her and we have it all listed down here, and he read that and is like,
no, I don't think he read.
He just doesn't know.
I don't think he doesn't know any of that. I think he knows exactly the information that he gave, which is, I mean, he knows she's a synth. Clearly, for some reason, I don't think he has access to her fucking brain or anything like that. I think if their situation would be much simpler if they did. I think he's trying to get her to go and on this sort of path of discovery, because this is an inconsistency. It's a very minor one. It's not going to set off any, theoretically, not going to set off any pre-programmed defense mechanisms. Maybe it will. Who knows? But the idea being that she will look up this information and maybe go on her own investigation that will result in her sort of understanding that something about her is strange. Plus, we have the deal with her mom, who clearly seems to be some sort of programming thing. Maybe she'll call her mom and be like, hey, Mom, why can't I find this record?
And then she'll all weirdly pass out as her mom talks to her.
Yeah, and then she knows about her sister Daj, and she even asked if Daj was okay after talking with Ramda, and Ramda was all like, are you the one who lives or the one who dies?
Yeah.
She's thinking her sister's dead. Now, her mom soothed her and turned her off and made her take a nap with some pre-programmed thing in the previously. Maybe she's going to start pushing that angle more. Why can't she get in contact with Daj? She clearly contacted her in the past because we know that Daj and her communicated, right? So I think that's Narrek's goal. And I think you're totally right that it's a multi-pronged goal in that he wants her to do this and kind of start doing this on her own, but he also is trying to get information from her and get her reaction and stuff. And then, of course, there's that third underlying thing, which we've all mentioned at various points, that he seems less and less wholly enthused about this, because as he gets to know her, it's like getting to know your enemy kind of thing.
Yeah.
You start to realize they're not maybe what you perceive them to be.
She hasn't brought up any memories of her childhood, so I don't know if that's just kind of like it hasn't fit in yet, or if there's going to be a part where she'll be like, wait a minute, I don't remember that part or something.
What she did do, that if you didn't catch, it's totally worth watching the episode again to catch this, even though it's a brief moment, because I thought it was really well done. When he, at the beginning of the sequence where he says he wants to take her to the old ancient, Borg ritual gag, she's following him, she's kind of chasing after him, following him through these hallways, and they're having a conversation. And I forget exactly what prompts it, but she asks a question or something, he responds, and she does the Data head tilt.
Oh, interesting.
The quizzical, like dog-like Data head tilt.
I didn't
and
catch that.
I'm really, really curious. I mean, I presume it was scripted. I don't know if Jonathan Frakes was involved in that or whatever, but it was like, the second time I saw it, it really stood out. The first time I kind of caught it, and the second time I was like, fuck, that's the Data head tilt. She must have been practicing that shit, because it's really, 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 really Data-like.
I got to watch that again. I totally didn't notice that.
It's in the Borg cube sequence where they're like kind of going through the hallways like in a rush before they get to the Amelie, playing in the grease
during
scene.
during the party with the mage and the fairy and the warrior in the town music.
Yeah, it's like leading into that scene.
Elf shot the food.
Elf shot the fucking food. Yeah, so the Raffi's ears looking pretty good, right? Not Raffi. That sounded weird. That made it sound totally different than what I was. Okay, Rizzo's ears, looking
You're digging
like
that? You're digging
the pointy one.
Well, I'm just wondering how. I mean, and this is the age-old question, right, of Star Trek.
wait, is it?
It's understandable how you can make a human look like any other creature, any other alien, because every other alien is basically human with shit on their face.
Right.
But how do you make an alien look like a human?
You got to cut that shit off.
Yeah, how do you put it back? You just put a 3D printer on their face, and so it's not their shit anymore.
Genetic squirting.
Yeah.
Well, squirt some genes in there.
There were episodes where they made people
some genes in her
look like-
ears,
and
her ears grow back.
Probably.
Seems like if you can go one way, you can go the other way.
Yeah. It's kind of like
it's like a
I mean, I guess if you can
Genetics
break
or
someone's molecules down and then reform them on a planet through a transporter.
I like that you weren't like criticizing like holographic navigational controls, but you're like, her ears, I don't know about that.
That's just not
That's
believable.
ridiculous.
Like we saw her and she had round ears.
How'd they put them back?
I didn't think she was a Romulan. at
She's
all.
really attractive.
Yeah.
And her brother.
Uh-huh.
And the whole like they're
that
totally
whole
having
thing,
sex with each other.
Yeah, like I would like to see both of them naked.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe,
I would like to see
maybe we
everybody
will.
everybody on this
Just
show.
Pretty much everybody on the show.
Everybody on the show,
So-
I'm down to clown with.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, and various combinations.
Mnrrh looks like a hobbit or a evil, sexy elf or something. I don't know. I could imagine him
He's
in the
pretty
Shire.
elfy, yeah.
Yeah, he's all angsty.
The transporters. I wasn't clear on the planetary defense system, right? On the Vashti or whatever. So they couldn't take their ships through, but they could transport through. I was like, when the thing opened up, they were just allowed to transport, or was that a sneaky transport?
I think it was one of those deals. They didn't, they left it to your imagination. You could argue that they could have explained it better or not. My impression was you can't take your ship through without permission. There's not much they can do about transporting, but that you can only do so much transporting down.
If
obviously.
you transport down, you're going to get in a fight with a bunch of hard-headed Romulans.
yeah, you're gonna fuck your ass up.
Man, the Romulans did that fucking thing where they find the badass guy and antagonize him. Oh, here's this guy who spends his whole life dedicated to like swords and protection and shit, and we're gonna egg him on and shit like that. That's what the townsfolk were doing, right? It's like in fucking oh, here's a witcher. He hunts monsters for a living. Let's fucking antagonize this guy in a bar.
Coin to your witcher.
Here's the Belmont clan. Their whole lineage is about hunting fucking vampires. Let's beat them up in a bar. Like, there's always this whole thing where this super badass and the dumb townsfolk are like, we're gonna fuck you up. We know for a living you do you kill people and you do awesome shit. And you're
We're
a total
not
badass.
expecting to lose for some reason.
Yeah, right.
I think in this case though, because I think that's a valid criticism, certainly in a lot of these cases. I think in this case, the impression I got was they hadn't really seen him in action much. Because what action would there be for him to have other than to occasionally help guard the roads or something?
Yeah.
My point being is this guy's not going around town just murdering people on a daily basis because he's never had a sworn lost cause mission before. And he, as far as they're concerned, he's just some kind of guy who lives with a bunch of nuns.
Because
he's
really,
he's not even a part of them.
Yeah.
Because it's the nuns that are the ones that normally do the killing. He just trained.
He's just trained and associated with them.
Yeah, so I guess it could be a safe assumption that based upon their history, he probably knows something. But I guess until you see it, it's hard to place it.
Plus, we did not get to see how he would have reacted, like that guy when he pulled out the disruptor and was like, "Well, fuck you, man! A disruptor's the sword's not going to stop a disruptor." And but they got beamed away, so we didn't see what his tactic would be. Maybe we will see that because a sword is cool, but it's that classic, it's the Indiana Jones thing. It's like a sword's only going to be so good compared to
unless you have a lightsaber, then you can dodge.
Yeah,
you can parry
deflect
those.
them.
Deflect those.
What does
bullets.
parry mean? I like that.
Yeah, I'll tell you
It's
tomorrow.
like I'll tell you tomorrow. He never taught him that.
Yeah, no, it's fucked up. They didn't do it in that transporter scene, but one of the first transporter scenes in that episode, Picard was actually walking while they transported him. I'd never seen that. They were walking while he was transporting. I was like, that's weird.
And harken back to there's some in some of the TOS movies. Which one? I think it might be Star Trek 2, where they're beaming and kind of talking, like Kirk and Spock are talking to each other while being beaming.
Yeah.
Or no, actually, it's like Kirk and it is Star Trek 2. Like when they get beamed up from the planet, the asteroid that Khan has trapped them in. Anyway,
real quick, the Qalankhkai, Shaka Khan,
the baklava.
The Free Blades. They said half the sisters are
Qowat Milat.
No, that's the name of the band.
What he said.
But the instrument is the Qalankhkai. No, their role. They say half the Mohat. Oh, God damn it!
Are you saying when he says I'm tying my janks to this guy and he's the Quackawadaka?
Yeah.
Quackalaka.
So the Qowat Milat is the name of the whole group, but half of the Qowat Milat end up being Qalankhkais.
Right.
And so they're free blades, and so they.
Shaka Khans.
I don't know what the other half do. I guess they just chill and read books or
Make
something.
bread.
Yeah,
It's
you gotta
bread.
make bread. You gotta have some people hang out at the monastery or the.
Yeah.
You gotta train
cloister.
You gotta train the new nuns,
Yeah. Well.
novices.
the last point wanted to bring up was when they're doing the spaceship move and they're all swaying back and forth. I was like thinking wait a minute, where's their inertial dampers? They're supposed to prevent that. And right after I thought that, they said,
Right.
put power to the inertial dampeners.
Right.
Now, they said dampeners, but I swear they used to call it dampers. I swear in like TNG, they used to call them inertial dampers.
I think it's dampeners.
No, I know that. Well, because originally I was thinking, I was like, wait a minute. They said, I thought they were dampeners. This was years ago. I was talking to someone, one of my friends, and I was like, that's dampeners. He was like, no, they said dampers. They're dampers. That's
Maybe
what
they said dampener.
Maybe your friend is a moron.
I don't know, but
Okay, no, this is easy. This gives us a good thing. Between now and next week, we'll watch all of Star Trek.
all of Star Trek.
We'll make a note.
Make a note.
Whole thing.
The whole thing from now next week. I just want to point out, though, that I always thought it was dampeners. It makes more sense to be dampeners. And the reason I brought it up is because I remember at one point being like, wait, they say dampers? I swear
Usually it was dampeners. I wouldn't be surprised if they mispronounced it on occasion.
Like how they mispronounced like a few. There was someone's name they kept mispronouncing for.
Well, Jaban, the hologram does mispronounce. We mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, that was on purpose, though. I'm trying
Chiban.
I was trying to.
You're Mr. Chiban. Sent the holo scans.
I feel like the first few episodes of Star Trek, they didn't.
But he had that super goofy American accent.
They didn't have a unified understanding of certain names.
Oh yeah, no, there were a few that were like that.
So the real the Rios is supposed to be. Is he supposed to be? Because sometimes he seems like he's got an accent.
I think
he's Latino.
Mexican.
He's a Latino actor,
Yes.
and he's playing a Latino character.
Montalban? Yeah, okay. It just seems like his accent only comes out sometimes.
But yeah, he has a light accent, but he has it, and he's occasionally will talk in Spanish, even before the Emmet or whatever, the tactical hologram was the more original, actual Latino person, whereas his character, actual Latino, that sounds ridiculous. He speaks Spanish all the time. It sounded. I don't know enough about it. It sounded like a Mexican accent to me, but I don't know what his. I don't know what his nationality is.
Yeah, that I would venture to say it's Mexican. Not being an expert on Latin American accents.
Well, you can write in review and tell us whether we're totally wrong.
Somebody help us, fucking white people out of this.
Boy with a stick.
We start a Patreon. We promise to take a tour of all of South and Central America and Mexico. We will utilize our Patreon funds to take a tour so that we can have a much better understanding of those cultures.
Raffi talks shit into Elnor says a boy with a stick.
Yeah, I know, right?
What the fuck is that, man?
It's a fucking sword. What kind of shit is that?
She's just being
talking
contrary.
some shit about a stick.
Yeah,
it's a sword.
It's
not a wooden sword. That's a stick. It's not a pretend sword.
She's just being bitter.
He just cut that dude's fucking head off.
Yeah.
So we before we end we got to wrap up things in a bit. But
Yrrh Mnrrh. What was Yrrh Mnrrh?
Okay, I don't know about that.
Yrrh Mnrrh. You remember Yrrh Mnrrh?
Garg Manargarg?
No, not Mock Malak.
It did sound like Garg Manargarg.
Is that from something?
It is.
Rick and Morty. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I should know that.
So I don't know what the Yrrh Mnrrh.
Yrrh Mnrrh. That was like some talk show.
Yrrh yeah, that's right. It's the talk show
called Yrrh Mnrrh. Probably means like
Yrrh Mnrrh.
It's probably like cute chat or like.
What are you talking about?
Fun ton.
She was watching Ramda, an old tape of Ramda giving an interview, and she said that was on a Romulan talk show of some sort.
Oh. Walk and talk. It's probably some cute name for a. Yrrh Mnrrh probably means like walk and talk.
Like Jolan True Romulus.
Jolan True.
It's a new morning. Today on Yrrh Mnrrh, we got Ramda talking about some shit. Talking about Sheb Sheneb.
She's going to tell us the news.
Seb Shaleb, the Destroyer.
The episode title, Absolute Candor, makes sense in context after you've seen the show. It's an interesting Romulan concept. It's an interesting concept generally. The entire episode, the first time I watched it through, I couldn't get it out of my head that it was a form of Condor flavored vodka.
What?
Absolute Condor. Like Absolute Limon.
I totally had no idea.
And I kept thinking that
he was pronouncing it like a German.
Condor.
I should have gotten that.
And I was like, what would that taste like? Would it be meaty and fleshy? Like what kind of? I don't know. I'm not into flavored vodkas. I'm not into vodka in general.
Oh, did you notice at the end they were saying they kept saying his ship, beam him in, got him. When was that like they were setting up what everyone knew that it was going to be 7 of 9, which is not a him?
Yeah.
That's kind of weird. They really.
Yeah. That was a little on the nose.
Right. They're like, oh, I wasn't expecting.
I mean, I was guessing. I was
Right.
guessing it was 7 of 9.
You saw her in the
immediately.
credits in the beginning. You're
Yeah,
like,
that
oh,
too.
she's going to show up in this episode.
Yeah.
And then you're like,
I
well, she
did-
hasn't showed up yet.
Yeah, right.
And it was a pretty awesome entrance. Because
Yeah,
I
it was
liked that
cool.
it was just like sort of bam, and she's like, "You owe me a shit."
Yeah,
and
yeah.
She just passes the fuck out.
Yeah, it's awesome because it's totally different than the 7 of 9. You know, I know she grew over time, like emotionally became back to a human or whatever, not so Borgy. But
It was very
cool.
interesting to hear an interview with Jerry Ryan where she discussed, I believe it was on the official podcast for Picard. I think it's called
Not the one with Will Wheaton.
No, that's the after show.
Okay.
That's the after track, which is also very good. But there's an official podcast. I think it's called the Picard podcast. Is very uninspired.
It is, yeah.
And it's a short podcast, but they do interviews with the writers and producers and things. And they interviewed Jerry Ryan, and it was really kind of cool to hear her talk about how she was very nervous to take on the role because she hadn't played it in so long. And then she agreed to it and she was excited. But then when she got the script and she started practicing, she by her account, almost had like a nervous breakdown because it just wasn't feeling right to her. And she talked about how on Voyager, that even though many people wrote the scripts for the shows, that Brannon Braga always rewrote or at least reviewed the 7 of 9 dialogue specifically, even if he was not the writer on that episode. And so she said it was a very singular voice, and that for a while she had real trouble sort of re-inhabiting the character. Just so much time had passed, etc. And then one of the producers, I think it might have been Michael Chabon, one of them told her, they said, here's how you have to think of it. You have to think of it that she's trying to be more human. Like she spent 20 years trying to be more human. She's going to be different. It's still 7 of 9, but there has to have been this growth and the motivation for that particular character. All the different characters are going to grow in different ways. Riker's going to grow in a certain direction. Picard, we've seen, went in a certain way, but 7 of 9, she got home to Earth, a planet she never even knew, and she's almost Data-like, making an effort to be more human. Unlike Data, she has the humanity within her to actually to build upon. And she said that clicked it for her, and then it just became, according to her, I know it's a promotional thing, but she really seemed to have enjoyed the role she played. And by all accounts, it seems like she's the last sort of cog in the RPG squad.
They picked up two
Right.
people.
Yeah,
they picked up their warrior,
The
and
party is complete now.
they picked up like two kinds of warriors.
Yeah, because I mean, she's going to be badass in some fashion or
Yeah, I was psyched after she delivered that line. I was like, I thought it was like, oh, that's cool.
They got some warriors. They got a nerd or two.
And
Yeah.
the
couple wizards.
I will have to wait to find out more about what the relationship between Picard and 7 of 9, or Annika, as she presumably goes by nowadays. We don't know what their relationship is. Clearly they know each other, which is not surprising because they are both ex-Borg. They're like two of the most
Right.
famous ex-Borg
Exactly,
people.
right.
In terms of
right.
humans that used to be Borg, there was Locutus of Borg, and there is 7 of 9, who was assimilated as a child and brought home miraculously by Voyager.
There was also like Hugh, but that's more famous within the audience, not
and-
so much within the show.
And Hugh, I don't even think he was a human originally necessarily. I can't remember actually.
it's hard to see if he'll ever come back.
Yeah, Hugh will be back.
Oh, he will.
Yeah. Hugh has got to play an important role here, and again, I don't know what the relationship is between Hugh and 7 of 9 because
When's
the thing
you coming back?
one presumes there might be some sort of a network or focus or what do you call the groups of people like post tragedy groups that get together
yeah.
because they have a shared thing and
It's not focus group, but that's what keeps coming to my head.
I know, right?
It's like
It's like group therapy kind
Yeah.
of thing, where maybe Picard and her crossed paths that way. But at the very least, we know they know about each other, and that's unsurprising that they would know each other by sight. That makes sense. And again, as we mentioned earlier, the impression certainly seems to be that I think the implication is that she is a Fenris Ranger or somehow associated with those people because clearly she has a ship. It's not a great ship, but she's got something going on there.
It seems like it adds together. They bring up the Rangers that episode, right? They have a ship. They're all like, "What is that piece of shit?"
And so she may have been attacking the Romulan. She sees a Romulan ship.
support group. I think
Support group. There
yeah.
you go.
It took me so long to remember.
There should be a
that
support
word.
group for people who can't remember things.
Yeah, right. Probably is.
But we can't remember
Nobody
where
ever
it is.
remembers to go to the meeting. Where is it again? I don't
That's
know.
a new joke. That is not an old joke.
That's new.
We just invented that.
We just came up with that
So,
right now.
Seven
Nobody
of-
ever heard that joke before.
7 of 9, right? In from her perspective, Star Trek.
Star Trek.
From her perspective, she sees a Romulan
Is
ship.
it re-earned or is it de-earned?
She sees a Romulan ship
Have you earned that?
attacking a smaller ship. She knows the Romulan ship is a piece of shit warlord ship. She knows whose ship it is. She doesn't know who this other ship is necessarily. And so she's protecting the ship that's being attacked by the warlord. That makes sense by itself. So if people had questions, why would Jerry Ryan just show up? Why would 7 of 9 just show up all of a sudden and rescue Picard? I don't think that's what she was doing. I think she was there to help out that planet. That was one of her things. That sector she patrols around. She sees this asshole attacking some ship and she tries to help them out. But in addition to that, we already had earlier in the show, Rafi was talking about how they were monitoring all the comm traffic and just hearing the fucking name Picard over and over again. So it could be possible that 7 of 9 was also monitoring that stuff and aware that Picard was somehow in the sector and that's what was causing this ruckus. So either way, I'm happy with all that. I don't know. I've heard some people say like, oh, I guess it's just 7 of 9 just shows up out of nowhere. It didn't really seem like that to me. It's like it made sense that she's in that area trying to help these people out.
Yeah. I imagine they would
Totally.
tie any loose ends because I think they would be aware that question might come up too, though.
It didn't seem like people had a lot of issues with this episode at all. Everybody's pretty much willing to buy it.
Yeah, I think anybody.
It's all pretty solid.
I thought it was an excellent.
Yeah.
It was a fun adventure.
Totally.
We know most of the characters now, and I don't know. I just got a kick out of all of it. The music was great. I thought the acting and the directing was great. It told a fun story.
Which some of them have got a strife at this point. Probably like 7 of 9 and Raffi are going to strife or something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of that, which will be fun.
Rafi's going to have a lot of problems with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And we still don't know her deal.
Rios.
We still don't know her deal with Free Cloud. She's not explaining clearly why she wants to go there. She does seem to imply that she's not really that keen on going there, but she's got some reason to go there. It looks like next week we're going to Free Cloud, and the preview looks pretty wild.
It's going to be freaky deaky.
I'll tell you, Dan, because I am appreciative of the idea of not seeing the previews because you don't necessarily want to
You can talk about them.
get spoiled on anything.
That's fine.
So far, the problem is I can't promise because I don't work on this fucking show. So far, these previews that they show after the show, they haven't felt very spoiler to me. Now, I've seen like on Discovery and on of course a million other TV shows, I sometimes get annoyed at the preview because I'm like, all right, well, I guess that person's showing up or whatever.
Right.
I mean, the preview for next week, it just, as Jesse implied, it just looks insane. Like, I don't know how to describe it.
It involves an eye patch.
It involves costumes and
Free Cloud, baby.
Yeah, it looks wild. And Free Cloud, when they're like flying in there, it looks pretty fucking wild.
Superfly.
Yeah. You're not even joking.
I'm not even joking.
But I have no idea what happens. I have no idea what happens, but it looks pretty
I'm
fun.
psyched. I was happy with this. I liked how this episode made me feel excited about. I mean, not that I wasn't before, but I liked.
Yeah. Things really got moving in a different. Like it was cool. The previous 3 episodes did a lot of setup and all that. You know, some people say it's too slow. I didn't find that. I've been enjoying it. In fact, I enjoy the slightly different pace. But it is true that this 4th episode kind of goes like, bam! Now we're in like exploration, adventure, getting into like kind of crazy stuff where it's going to be hard to predict what's going to go on.
Yeah, because episode 3 was like the end is the new beginning or whatever, and it's kind of like, well, they're not on Earth anymore. And you guys were laughing at me when I talked about that opening. I know you were just laughing in general. I'm not trying to be defensive, but like the whole idea of Picard showing Picard in the opening credits. It shows Picard, and then it shows space, and it shows all these like patterns, and it shows these space things, and it comes to make an eyeball, but then the eyeball's a planet, but then it's Picard's face or something.
It's a Borg eyeball.
There's a Borg eyeball. Was it a Borg eyeball or was it
looks
just an eyeball?
It looks kind of
Borg eyeball.
It looks like a manufactured. It could be an Android eyeball. It could be a Borg eyeball.
But it's like connecting them all together, and it's like Picard is on Earth, but now he's connecting. Now he's into space. So I dig that. The opening song is fine.
I'm digging on it more and more, and I gotta say, and we talked about this in the pilot episode that I think all 3 of us were like, yeah, it's cool music, it's nice music and all, but who knows? And I think we were talking about how maybe it'll grow on us as we like experience the story because the opening clearly is linked in some way. I definitely get that vibe that now I'm getting more interested in like enjoying the opening. And getting back to the Miyazaki point, the opening music has again a little of that. When there's I'm trying to remember his name, Joe Hisaishi. Joe Hisaishi is the composer who did most of the Miyazaki movies, and he's a Japanese composer who is really good at combining Asian themes, Japanese themes, Western European themes, modern, classical, but his musical themes tend to have sort of a pastoral, sort of calm vibe to them, but with a hint of sadness and loss. I don't know, very complex. And I'm finding that the theme music is pretty complex. And I think I noticed it especially in this episode, not just at the beginning, but at the end, because the music was all like kind of crazy and like super whatever at the end. And then it goes into that, the end credit music, which is a refrain of the opening music, and the sort of difference between the two really stood out to me. That it's this real kind of melancholy, but there's a hopefulness, but a melancholiness in the theme. It's growing on me.
Yeah, I definitely think the music in the during the episode, the way it sort of weaves together is really good for sure.
Yeah.
Agreed. All right, so let's shut things down there.
We need reviews, right?
We need reviews.
Oh, were we going
ratings and reviews?
Were we going to last points? Was that
last points?
No reviews, no jokes.
No jokes, no reviews.
I was thinking about this. We're really setting ourselves up for failure with this review joke thing, or at least you're setting this up to stress me out because
we're setting you up.
Setting you up. Because if I don't write any jokes, that means we're not getting any reviews. So that's not a win. But if we get a million reviews, how the fuck am I going to keep up with those? I'm going to have to make a whole joke book.
Right.
So maybe I can turn that into, if there's a million reviews out there, I can start making money writing joke books.
You could, and then you wouldn't have to do
internet.
this fucking podcast anymore.
Yeah, fuck this
and
place.
we could stop paying you the podcast salary.
It's a catch-20.
It's exorbitant podcast salary.
That's right. It's a catch, and then it's a catch-22 or whatever. Then, right? Because people like it, want to write reviews, but then I'm going to leave, become a famous joke man. So, so we just need a few reviews.
You're going to go join the baklava. And
baklava.
Yeah, that's the joke writers union.
The baklava.
Yeah, you can only write jokes for lost causes, though. So it's appropriate that you're
Kaka Kwan.
Yeah, you can be a Kaka Kwan. You can be a Shaka Kwan in the baklava.
That was a nice callback.
Yeah.
I hope there's a million reviews, and I have to have a part-time job writing jokes. That would be fantastic. But like I said, set up to failure because there's no way I can keep up with that. And then people.
Anyway, what Dan's talking about, in case this is the first episode you're listening to, which is crazy.
That's fucking stupid.
But if it is,
there's no way that's true.
We have a standing bargain with our audience, who we have 300 million people listening. I'm positive I'm reading those stats properly, but we are really not getting any ratings and reviews. I can't even give a fuck about the ratings, just the rewiew bit. I think you have to leave a rating to leave a review. But anyway, leave a review, and the deal is, the open standing bargain is that Dan will reward the whole audience. If only one member of the audience writes a review, boom, the whole audience gets to enjoy a joke. Now, as I'm saying that, I'm understanding we're dealing with a tragedy of the commons type situation here. Classic economic difficulty, which is when everybody benefits on the action of one person, that one person, then everyone assumes somebody else is going to do it. Don't do that. Don't make that fucking mistake. That's why the whole fucking planet's in the situation it is right now, and that we're not living in the Federation. We're living in a fucking nightmare. Is because of people like you who don't take action, individual action. It only takes like 5 fucking minutes.
Whoa.
Anyway, and this is funny because I'm usually the one who gets pissed off at podcasts when they're like,
like and subscribe. There's this. Wait, so did we?
Hey guys.
Yeah. If you like that, don't be a taker. So wait, am I writing a joke per review, or just if there's one, I just write one or more? I write a.
You can use the same joke each time if you want.
You can modify. I mean, at least. Because
I was under the assumption that I was beholden to make a joke per review, and if that's what it is,
I think
it could be one of those.
I think you are beholden to make a joke per review, but at least we're gonna get one review.
That's fine. No, I will do it. I will do one joke per review. I'll do that.
All right. So that's the
joke
deal.
can just evolve over time.
Like that
for each review.
The joke, like for Patrick, started with the re-earn. That could totally evolve into a joke, right? Maybe that.
maybe.
That's kind of a dick.
Backhanded. It's like, that piece, that fucking nonsense you said earlier.
Because
we might be able to massage that into some form of humor.
Because that was so funny. We got to do something with it.
Wow, I'm pretty awesome.
Anyway, okay.
So you got to earn it. You got to re-earn. That's why I was thinking re-earn being like a word because it's earn. Re-earn. It's like you earn it and then you re-earn it and then you de-ash it.
Yeah.
Perspective. So, there's something there.
There's something there. And there's going to be something there for next week and every week afterwards because we're going to keep doing this goddamn show every week. So if you want to contact us, you can contact us via email at feedback@itsgotstartrek.com.
Not feedback.
No, although I can probably set up an alias so that if you really wanted to type in feedback, I don't know why you would do that. But anyway, feedback would be the way to go to ensure that you can get in contact with us. Social media, it's at It's Got Star Trek, @ It's Got Star Trek everywhere. We have a Facebook page, which is pretty cool. You can go there.
I think it's on YouTube.
It's Got Star Trek. You can get us on YouTube. You can get us on Stitcher. You can get us on Spotify. You can get us on Apple Podcasts, which used to be called iTunes. You can get us on Google. You can get us on Overcast. You can get us on most things. You know what? And if for some reason you cannot find this podcast in your podcast player, which would be unusual since you are listening to it, but you could be listening to it on the website. If you can't find it, email us, and then we will do what we need to do behind the scenes. You sometimes have to threaten some of these podcast outfits, and it's worked in the past. Like we've sorted out some of them, but we don't know all the fucking podcast apps. There's Player FM. There's a million fucking places.
If you want us to press it on a record, just send us the money, and we'll press it on a record for you.
A record?
Yeah, like I was thinking, press record on a record, a record.
You got to save this for when people give us reviews.
See, Dan counts that as a joke.
Phishing scheme, feedback, phishing, PIHISH, phishing, like a phishing scheme because it's like feedback, but it's feedback, so you catch them in a phishing scheme.
We're not going to try to steal your passwords.
But phishing is food, like feed. You feed bag.
That is
feed bag. Phishing is food. You see what I'm saying?
That's some word wizardry.
All right, so it's got Star Trek at the .com.
We will not fish you. I promise. I'm sorry. That was just a joke.
Feedback at itsgotstartrek.com. We got jokes.
Not feedback.
We don't got reviews. We could use them. We don't have a Patreon yet because we're not going to fucking patronize you guys at this stage. I mean that in both senses of the term patronize. So,
I know what you're
we'll
saying.
get to that. Maybe eventually we'll offer some T-shirts or some shit with clever slogans that with like punchlines from Dan.
They will be extraordinary.
Yeah, it'll be
Right,
fantastic.
I don't have a prolapse, Danis.
Yeah.
All right, so that does it for us. We're gonna sign off here. We're gonna pour ourselves a glass of some Absolute Candor.
Yeah, Absolute Candor. That was really good. That got me.
We're gonna enjoy that
hitherto.
And in the
It's so
meantime,
feathery.
you will hear from us next week for the next episode of Star Trek Picard, as covered by the It's Got Star Trek podcast. So y'all have a good one.
It seems a little odd that a working ship should have a hospitality hologram.
I came with a basic installation, sir, but you're right. Hospitality emergencies are rare on this vessel. In general, the captain keeps his own company.
Come!
You want to go to Vashti? Are you out of your goddamn mind?
I hate that fucking hospitality hologram.